Hashtag Part 1. The Invitation. Marcus Johnson sat alone in the campus coffee shop, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the wooden table as he studied for his music theory exam. The autumn afternoon light streamed through the windows, highlighting the dark circles under his eyes from late nights of practice and study. "Hey, you're Marcus, right?" He looked up to see Tyler Chen, a student from his Western Civilization class. Marcus nodded, surprised that someone outside the music department recognized him. "Yeah, that's me," Marcus replied, closing his textbook. Tyler slid into the chair across from him. "Look, there's this party tonight at Alpha Beta Phi. My cousin's a member, and he said I could bring friends." Tyler pushed a small paper invitation across the table. "You should come." Marcus stared at the invitation, unsure how to respond. Alpha Beta Phi was known as the most elite fraternity on campus, prestigious, wealthy, and overwhelmingly white. In his entire sophomore year at Westlake University, Marcus had never been invited to one of their events. "I don't know," Marcus said, hesitation clear in his voice. "I've got a recital coming up next week, and I need to practice." "All you do is practice," Tyler said with a friendly smile. "One night off won't hurt. Besides, it might be good to meet some people outside the music building." Marcus turned the invitation over in his hands. As one of only 3 black students in the university's competitive music program, he kept mostly to himself, focusing on his studies and piano practice rather than socializing. His roommate Derek was always telling him he needed to get out more. "I'll think about it," Marcus finally said, tucking the invitation into his backpack. Later that evening, Marcus sat on his bed in the small dorm room he shared with Derek, staring at the invitation. "Dude, you have to go?" Derek insisted when Marcus told him about it. "Alpha Beta Phi parties are legendary. Everyone tries to get in." "I don't know if I'll fit in there," Marcus admitted, voicing his real concern. Derek paused his video game and turned to face Marcus. "Look, I get it. But you can't hide in practice rooms forever. You're an amazing pianist. You belong at this school just as much as anyone else." Marcus sighed. Maybe Derek was right. Perhaps it was time to step outside his comfort zone. "Fine," he said. "I'll go for an hour." As darkness fell across campus, Marcus stood in front of his mirror, adjusting the collar of his blue button-down shirt. His mother had always taught him to dress well. "Give them one less thing to judge you for," she'd say. The walk to Greek route took 15 minutes. With each step, Marcus felt his anxiety growing. The sounds of music and laughter grew louder as he approached the large colonial-style house with Greek letters proudly displayed above the entrance. Outside, students gathered in small groups, red cups in hand. Many wore expensive clothes that Marcus recognized from brands he could never afford on his scholarship budget. A few heads turned as he approached, expressions ranging from curious to surprised. At the door, a tall student with a clipboard looked Marcus up and down. "Name?" "Marcus Johnson. Tyler Chen invited me." The doorkeeper scanned his list, eyebrows raised. After a moment, he nodded and stepped aside. "First time at Alpha Beta?" he asked as Marcus passed. "Yeah," Marcus replied. "Well, drinks are in the kitchen, music's in the back." The doorkeeper gave him a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Enjoy yourself." Marcus stepped inside, immediately hit by the loud music and the heat of too many bodies in one space. He took a deep breath and moved forward, unaware that the invitation that felt like an opportunity would soon become something entirely different. The fraternity house buzzed with energy as Marcus made his way through the crowded entrance hall. Lights flashed in rhythm, with bass-heavy music that vibrated through the floorboards. Expensive furniture lined the walls, and large photos of fraternity members from past years hung in fancy frames. Marcus scanned the room for Tyler, the only familiar face he expected to see here. No luck, he was on his own. As he moved deeper into the party, Marcus noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere. Conversations paused briefly as he passed. Eyes followed him. A few people whispered behind their cups. Though no one said anything directly to him, Marcus felt like an animal in a zoo. Something to be observed rather than welcomed. "You look lost," said a female voice. Marcus turned to see a girl with long brown hair and friendly eyes. She wore a Westlake University sweatshirt rather than the designer clothes most others had on. "That obvious, huh?" Marcus replied with a small smile. "I'm Emma," she said, extending her hand. Music education major. Marcus, piano performance. He shook her hand, relieved to meet someone from his department. No way, I probably heard you practice in the halls. The piano rooms have thin walls, Emma said. What brings you to Alpha Beta Phi? Don't usually see music majors here. Before Marcus could answer, a tall student bumped into him, spilling beer on Marcus's sleeve. Watch it, the student said, not even looking back as he walked away. Emma frowned. Sorry about that. Not everyone here has manners. Marcus brushed at his wet sleeve. It's fine. My roommate thought I should get out more. Meet new people. Well, let me introduce you to some friends who aren't jerks, Emma offered. She led him toward a less crowded corner where a small group stood talking. As they approached, Marcus noticed one of the guys looking over with clear discomfort. He whispered something to the others, and by the time Marcus and Emma reached them, the group had mysteriously needed to grab more drinks. Emma's smile faltered. I'm sorry, they're not usually like that. It's okay, Marcus said, though they both knew it wasn't. I'm used to it. The uncomfortable moment was interrupted when the music suddenly changed from hip-hop to a country song, triggering groans from some partygoers and cheers from others. I'm going to find the bathroom, Marcus said, needing a moment alone. As he navigated through the party, he overheard snippets of conversation. Who invited him? Probably here on some diversity scholarship. Does he even belong here? The words stung, but Marcus kept his face neutral. He learned long ago not to show when things bothered him. The upstairs hallway was quieter, with fewer people. Marcus found the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. Looking in the mirror, he questioned his decision to come tonight. What was I thinking? He muttered to himself. When he exited the bathroom, he nearly collided with a group of fraternity brothers wearing matching Alpha Beta Phi shirts. Whoa, what are you doing up here? Asked one with short blonde hair and a red face from drinking. His name tag read Brad, President. Just using the bathroom, Marcus replied, trying to move past them. Brad blocked his path. Members and special guests only on this floor. Parties downstairs. The way he said special guests made it clear Marcus wasn't one. No problem, I was heading back down, Marcus said calmly, though his heart raced. Brad and his friends formed a circle around Marcus as they walked him to the stairs like guards escorting a prisoner. Their presence drew attention, and more eyes turned to watch Marcus's uncomfortable descent. By the time they reached the main floor, Marcus had decided to leave. He'd given this party a chance, and it had gone exactly as he feared. But as he turned toward the exit, he felt a firm hand on his shoulder. Not so fast, Brad said, his friendly tone contrasting with the tight grip. I heard you're a music major. We have something special planned for you. Brad's hand remained firmly on Marcus's shoulder as he guided him away from the exit and deeper into the party. Marcus felt trapped, surrounded by Brad and 3 other fraternity brothers who formed a tight circle around him. So what's your instrument? Brad asked loudly, drawing attention from nearby partygoers. Piano, Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady despite his discomfort. Brad's eyes lit up. He exchanged meaningful glances with his friends. No way, that's perfect. The music playing through the speakers suddenly lowered, and Brad raised his voice to address the crowd. Hey, everyone. Listen up. We got something special tonight. Students turned toward them, conversations dying down as Brad continued. This here is Marcus. He's a piano major at our fine university. Marcus shifted his weight, looking for a way out of the spotlight. Emma caught his eye from across the room, her expression concerned. She started making her way toward him, but the crowd was thick. Marcus, Brad continued, we don't often get real talent at these parties. Just a bunch of business and engineering majors who can't tell Mozart from Metallica. Laughter rippled through the room. Brad was clearly popular here, and the crowd hummed on his every word. You know, we have this beautiful grand piano that nobody ever plays, Brad said, turning to Marcus with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was donated by some alumni who thought we needed culture. One of Brad's friends, a tall guy with a baseball cap, chimed in. Yeah, it just sits there collecting dust and beer stains. More laughter from the crowd. Marcus could see where this was heading, but felt powerless to stop it. What do you say, Marcus? Brad asked. Want to show us what you can do? The question didn't sound like a request. Before Marcus could answer, Brad was already leading him toward the back of the house, into a large room where a black grand piano sat in the corner. It was an impressive instrument, clearly expensive, though Marcus could see it hadn't been tuned or cared for properly. Students began flowing into the room, forming a circle around the piano. Some held up their phones, ready to record whatever was about to happen. Marcus spotted Emma trying to push through the crowd, concern written on her face. "I really should be heading out," Marcus said quietly to Brad. "I have an early rehearsal tomorrow." Brad's friendly facade slipped for just a moment. "Come on, man. Don't be rude. Everyone wants to hear you play." "Yeah," another fraternity brother added. "We invited you to our party. Least you could do is entertain us a little." The word entertain hung in the air, heavy with implications that made Marcus's stomach turn. He'd been in situations like this before, expected to perform, to prove himself worthy of being in spaces not designed for people who looked like him. Brad leaned in closer, lowering his voice so only Marcus could hear. "What's the matter? I thought you people were supposed to be naturally musical." Marcus froze, the words hitting him like a physical blow. Around him, the crowd grew more insistent. "Play something. Show us what you got." "Maybe something urban," Brad suggested loudly, triggering laughs from his friends. One of the brothers mimicked playing a piano with exaggerated movements, swaying like he was in a gospel church. Another made a comment about playing like Ray Charles. Marcus stood still as the mockery continued. He glanced toward the exit, calculating if he could push through the crowd and leave. But he was completely surrounded now, with Brad and his friends forming a barrier between him and the door. The room felt too hot, too loud. Phones pointed at him from every direction. What had started as an uncomfortable social situation had transformed into something much uglier. "Come on, Marcus," Brad said, slapping him on the back hard enough to make him step forward. "The piano's waiting." With no clear way out, Marcus found himself standing directly in front of the grand piano, with dozens of eyes watching his every move. The silence that fell over the room was worse than the noise had been, a silence filled with expectation and judgment. The grand piano loomed before Marcus like a challenge. Its polished black surface reflected the faces of the crowd surrounding him, some curious, others amused, and a few showing the unmistakable smirk of people waiting for entertainment at someone else's expense. "We're waiting," Brad announced, crossing his arms. The fraternity president looked pleased with himself, like a cat that had cornered a mouse. Marcus slowly placed his hand on the piano bench, feeling the smooth wood beneath his fingers. The room had grown uncomfortably quiet except for whispers and occasional snickers. Phones were raised higher, recording his every move. "Maybe he doesn't actually play," someone muttered from the crowd. "Probably lied about being a music major." "Play something with a good beat," called out another voice. "You know, something with soul." The comment triggered more laughter. Marcus felt heat rising in his face but kept his expression neutral. Years of performing had taught him to hide his emotions, though never in a situation like this. Brad stepped closer, his voice lowered but still loud enough for those nearby to hear. "What's wrong? Stage fright? I thought you'd jump at the chance to show off." A girl in a blue dress giggled. "Maybe he only knows chopsticks." Marcus scanned the room, looking for any friendly face. He spotted Emma at the edge of the crowd, trying to push her way forward, but two large fraternity brothers blocked her path. She caught his eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry." "How about this?" Brad said, pulling out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times and held it up. "I'll play a beat, and you follow along. Should be easy for you, right?" The phone began playing a hip-hop track at full volume. Several guys in the crowd began dancing exaggeratedly, some making gestures that were clearly meant to mock black culture. "Come on, Marcus," Brad insisted, the false friendliness dropping from his voice. "Show us your natural rhythm." Marcus stood frozen, the familiar feeling of being made into a spectacle washing over him. It wasn't the first time he'd been reduced to stereotypes, but it was the first time it had happened with such a large audience. "I think our piano man is shy," announced one of Brad's friends, a stocky guy wearing an Alpha Beta Phi Letterman jacket. "Maybe he needs some liquid courage." The guy approached with a red cup filled to the brim with what smelled like cheap vodka mixed with punch. "Drink up, maestro." Marcus shook his head. "No, thanks." "What, you too good to drink with us now?" The guy pushed the cup toward Marcus's face, sloshing some of the liquid onto Marcus's shirt. The red stain spread across his blue button-down, the one his mother had given him for his university interviews. Something inside Marcus shifted. The humiliation was quickly turning to anger. "I said no," Marcus repeated, his voice firmer this time. The guy looked surprised, then annoyed. "Listen, we invited you here." "No, Tyler invited me," Marcus corrected him. "And I don't think this is what he had in mind." Brad stepped between them. "Look, we're just having some fun. Why are you being so sensitive?" From the crowd, a voice called out. "Maybe he can't actually play. Probably got into the music program through some diversity quota." The comment hung in the air. Marcus looked at the faces surrounding him, some uncomfortable, others nodding in agreement. He realized this moment would define how these people saw him, not just tonight but for his remaining years at Westlake University. "Play something," Brad demanded again, the pretense of friendliness completely gone. "Or admit you don't belong here, in this house, or in that music program." Marcus felt trapped. Walking away now would confirm their worst assumptions. Staying meant enduring more humiliation. Either way, they would win. Emma had finally broken through the crowd and reached the edge of the circle. "Leave him alone, Brad," she said. "This isn't funny." Brad barely glanced at her. "No one asked for your opinion, Emma. Go back to the kiddie corner with the other music nerds." Marcus looked at the piano again. His fingers tingled with familiar anticipation despite the circumstances. The instrument itself was innocent, a beautiful thing trapped in an ugly situation, much like himself. In that moment, surrounded by mocking faces and cruel laughter, Marcus made his decision. Marcus took a deep breath and straightened his shoulders. The room around him continued buzzing with whispers and laughter, but something had changed inside him. The fear and humiliation still burned, but beneath that burned something stronger, a quiet determination that had carried him through countless challenges before this night. He thought of his mother, who had worked 2 jobs to pay for his first piano lessons. He thought of Mr. Collins, his high school music teacher who had stayed after hours to help him prepare for conservatory auditions. He thought of the countless hours he had spent alone in practice rooms, perfecting his craft while others were out socializing. "Well?" Brad pressed, his voice cutting through Marcus's thoughts. "We're waiting. Or should we help you find the door?" Marcus slowly sat down on the bench. A cheer went up from several fraternity members who thought they had won. He adjusted the seat position, buying himself a few more seconds to think. "Play something with a beat," someone called out. "Yeah, something we can dance to," another voice added. Marcus placed his hands on the keys but didn't press down. The piano was slightly out of tune, he could tell just from touching it. Not terrible, but noticeable to a trained ear. He ran his fingers lightly over the ivory, feeling the familiar smoothness that had always brought him comfort. Brad leaned against the piano, smirking down at Marcus. "Come on, Mozart. The night's not getting any younger." Marcus looked up at him, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. "This piano needs tuning." Brad's smirk faltered slightly at Marcus's calm assessment. "Just play something." From the crowd, Emma caught his eye again. She gave him a small nod of encouragement. It wasn't much, but in that moment, it was enough. Marcus closed his eyes. The room, with all its hostility, faded away. In his mind, he was back in the university's recital hall, where he spent most of his waking hours. There, the acoustics were perfect. There, he was judged only by the quality of his playing. When he opened his eyes again, his decision was made. They wanted a show? He would give them one, but not the one they expected. Marcus positioned his hands over the keys, feeling the familiar stretch across the octaves. His fingers found their places instinctively, muscle memory from thousands of hours of practice guiding them. "Is he actually going to play?" someone whispered. "Probably just knows Mary had a little lamb," another voice replied, triggering more laughter. Marcus ignored them all. In his mind, he heard the opening notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor, one of the most technically challenging pieces in the piano repertoire, a piece that had taken him months to master. Brad, growing impatient, tapped the piano sharply. "Today, please." Marcus looked up at him one last time. "You wanted me to play," he said quietly, "so I will." Before Brad could respond, Marcus's fingers struck the first notes, gentle, almost questioning. The delicate G minor melody rose from the piano, floating above the noise of the party. A few nearby conversations continued, but already some heads had turned in surprise. This wasn't what they had expected. Not rap, not jazz, not any of the stereotypes they had tried to force upon him. Marcus leaned into the music, allowing the familiar notes to flow through him. The gentle introduction would soon give way to one of the most technically demanding passages in classical piano literature, a hurricane of notes that required absolute precision and years of training. As the music began to build, Marcus felt a sense of calm wash over him. Here, at the piano, he knew exactly who he was. Here, no one could take away what he had earned through years of dedication. The fraternity brothers exchanged confused glances as the classical music continued. This wasn't part of their plan, but Marcus was no longer playing for them. He was playing for himself. The melody flowed from Marcus's fingers, filling the room with sound. The gentle opening notes had captured attention, but as he moved into the main section of Chopin's ballade, the entire atmosphere of the fraternity house transformed. Marcus's hands flew across the keyboard with incredible speed and precision. His left hand stretched to reach difficult bass notes, while his right created cascades of sound that seemed impossible for human fingers to produce. The complex harmonies and lightning-fast runs demonstrated years of intense training and natural talent that couldn't be faked. The laughter stopped, the whispers died, the mocking faces froze in expressions of shock. Brad, who had been leaning against the piano with a smug smile, slowly straightened up. His mouth opened slightly as he watched Marcus's fingers blur across the keys. This was not what he had expected. Not at all. Several students who had been heading for the door paused and turned back. A few who had been recording to mock him later continued filming, but the applause continued for nearly a minute, filling the fraternity house with a sound it rarely heard, genuine appreciation for artistic talent. Marcus stood awkwardly by the piano, unsure how to react to this sudden change in the room's energy. The same people who had been snickering at him moments ago now stared with wide eyes and open mouths. Emma pushed through the crowd and reached him first. "That was incredible," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Chopin's Ballade No. 1. I've never heard anyone play it that well outside of professional concerts." Before Marcus could respond, other students surrounded him. Their questions came fast and from all directions. "How long have you been playing? Do you perform professionally? Can you teach me to play?" A tall girl with glasses who introduced herself as a music theory student asked, "Are you the Marcus Johnson who won the regional piano competition last year? I thought your name sounded familiar." Marcus nodded, slightly overwhelmed by the attention. "Yes, that was me." "Dude, you're practically famous in the music department," she said, turning to explain to the others. "He beat out students from Juilliard in that competition." From the corner of his eye, Marcus noticed Brad and his fraternity brothers huddled together, looking uncomfortable. They whispered among themselves, occasionally glancing in his direction. The power balance in the room had shifted dramatically. Tyler Chen, who had invited Marcus to the party, finally reached him. "Marcus, I had no idea. I'm so sorry about what happened. If I'd known they would." "It's okay," Marcus said, cutting him off. He didn't want Tyler's apology. The situation wasn't his fault. "You couldn't have known." A senior from the music department whom Marcus recognized but had never spoken to approached with respect in his eyes. "I've been trying to play that piece for 3 years," he admitted. "Never got it right. The way you handled those runs in the middle section, would you consider giving me some pointers sometime?" Before Marcus could answer, someone tapped his shoulder. He turned to find one of the fraternity brothers holding out a bottle of water. "Thought you might be thirsty after that," he said, his eyes not quite meeting Marcus's. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Across the room, Marcus spotted Brad watching the scene unfold. Their eyes met briefly before Brad looked away, his face flushed with what might have been embarrassment or anger, perhaps both. Emma leaned closer to Marcus. "Your video is already blowing up," she whispered, showing him her phone. "Someone posted it on the university social media page. Look at the comments." Marcus glanced at the screen and saw dozens of comments appearing in real time. "Who is this guy? Amazing talent at Westlake. This is why we need more funding for the arts programs." "I was there." The room went completely silent when he started playing. As the night continued, the atmosphere of the party changed. People approached Marcus with genuine interest rather than mockery. Some asked about his background and training. Others wanted to know his favorite composers or pieces to play. Even the music playing through the speakers had changed. Someone had switched from the typical party playlist to classical piano recordings. Around midnight, as the crowd began to thin, Marcus decided it was time to leave. As he made his way toward the door, students parted to let him through, some nodding in respect, others still looking at him with amazement. Outside, the cool night air felt good after the stuffiness of the crowded house. Emma had offered to walk back with him to the music dorms. "So," she said as they walked under the campus streetlights, "not exactly the party experience you were expecting, huh?" Marcus smiled slightly. "Definitely not." "For what it's worth," Emma said, "what they did was awful. But the way you responded." She shook her head in admiration. "You didn't just prove them wrong. You showed them something beautiful." As they reached the intersection where their paths would separate, Marcus looked back toward the fraternity house in the distance. What had begun as one of the worst nights of his college experience had somehow transformed into something unexpected. He had entered that house as a target for ridicule. He had left as someone to be respected. The Monday morning after the party, Marcus walked into the music building feeling different. Students he'd never spoken to nodded and smiled as he passed. A few even stopped him to compliment his playing, having seen the video that had spread across campus social media over the weekend. "Marcus Johnson." He turned to see Professor Rivera, the head of the piano department, motioning him into her office. His stomach tightened. Had he done something wrong? "Close the door, please," she said as he entered. Her expression was serious as she placed her phone on the desk between them. "I assume you know why I wanted to speak with you." Marcus nodded silently, preparing himself for a lecture about representing the music department properly. Instead, Professor Rivera's stern expression softened. "That was extraordinary playing, Marcus, especially under those circumstances." She turned her phone around to show him the video. It had over 50,000 views already. "I've received calls from 3 local news stations this morning," she continued. "They want to interview you, and the dean wants to speak with you about what happened at that fraternity." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I don't want to make trouble." "You're not making trouble," Professor Rivera interrupted firmly. "What those students did was unacceptable. The university is taking this very seriously." Later that day, Marcus received an email from Dean Harris requesting a meeting. When he arrived at the administration building, he was surprised to find not only the dean but also Dr. Peterson, the faculty advisor for Alpha Beta Phi. "Marcus," the dean began, "first, let me say how sorry I am about what happened. Dr. Peterson and I have reviewed the videos, and we've spoken with several students who were present." Dr. Peterson leaned forward. "The behavior displayed by certain members of Alpha Beta Phi violated multiple university policies regarding discrimination and harassment. The fraternity has been placed on probation, and the individuals directly involved face disciplinary action." Marcus hadn't expected this level of response. "I appreciate that, but—" "There's more," the dean said. "We'd like to offer you a special recital opportunity. The university's Donor Appreciation Concert is next month, and we believe you would be the perfect performer to represent our music program." The Donor Concert was usually reserved for graduate students or faculty. For a sophomore to be invited was unprecedented. As Marcus left the administration building, his phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "This is Brad from Alpha Beta Phi. Can we talk? In person?" Marcus stared at the message for a long moment before replying. "Music building, practice room 103, 4 p.m. When Brad arrived, he looked different from the confident fraternity president who had humiliated Marcus days earlier. His shoulders were hunched, his expression uneasy. "The university is requiring us to take cultural sensitivity training," Brad said after an awkward silence. "And I've been suspended as president." Marcus waited, saying nothing. "I came to apologize," Brad finally said, his eyes meeting Marcus's briefly before looking away. "What we did, it was wrong. I never really thought about how it feels to be the only black student in a room full of people who've already decided who you are before knowing you." Marcus finished for him. Brad nodded, his face flushed. "Yeah, that." The silence between them stretched out. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Brad finally said, "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." As the weeks passed, the ripple effects of that night continued to spread. The music department organized a series of campus performances highlighting diverse classical composers. The student newspaper ran a feature on microaggressions and racial stereotyping on campus. Marcus found himself unexpectedly at the center of important conversations. For his donor concert performance, Marcus chose a piece by William Grant Still, an influential black composer often overlooked in classical music education. Before playing, he spoke briefly about musical traditions and the importance of looking beyond stereotypes. The recital hall was packed: music students, faculty, university donors, and, surprisingly, several members of Alpha Beta Phi, including Brad, sitting quietly in the back row. As Marcus took his place at the piano, he thought about how differently things might have gone that night if he had walked away, or if he had played what they expected him to play. Instead, in a moment meant to humiliate him, he had chosen to show his true self. His fingers touched the keys, and once again, the music spoke for him, this time to an audience ready to listen.